digital Ries since last year, and I'm happy to introduce you this wonderful book which I tried to read in the past year, and it was really nice because after my first pet project, I thought, how can I develop my project so I can not spend a lot of money but get some outcome. And since that I started to dig in the internet and search on the internet, and afterwards I found that there is some books that say how to develop the new idea, how to develop a startup, and I thought about that there are a lot of new ideas that I can dig up in this project, in these books. So one of them is Lean Startup by Ries. This is the bestseller, but a little bit from 2011. Maybe some people can say it's outdated, but nonetheless the ideas is still alive, and not all, but many of these ideas I'll bring in my next projects, which I'll make for myself, for my development, for my future. So let us switch to the next slide. What is this book about? Well, this book is about continuous proving of our ideas and our own experimenting. So the goal of the startup is to figure out which right thing to build. Actually, if we not know which is right thing to do, then we don't do this thing. So as well as it works as for the customers also. If you don't know what people want, you cannot build this. And the second thing is to get the knowledge which are the customers' preferabilities and what they will be paying for. So this knowledge you should gain as quickly as possible. So the other thing is not to make a complex plan, not to make a lot of predictions what is going on, what should happen afterwards, but you should test your ideas, your prototypes as quickly and as cheaply as possible. So it's understandable. And think that you should have a vision. You should go your true north. You should know how to change the things which are now and you should have a strategy and what to achieve your vision. Because the strategy includes the business model and the product roadmap, the opinions about the competition and assumptions about who the customer will be. And the product is only the result of the strategy. The products change constantly through the process of our optimization and excellence. So can you switch please? Next slide. This presentation is divided into somehow into the book captions, and so the next book caption was defined. I placed on the slide the key takeaways from this chapter or this paragraph to introduce you the main things which caught my eye at this paragraph or this chapter or this section. So for the startup, it is usually the conditions of extreme uncertainty. So you should create something new, something valuable under the condition of extreme uncertainty, and it is not it is everything about unpredictableness of the outcome, the unpredictableness of some unpredictableness of the situations, unpredictableness of things which will be required to do the product. So this innovation is the bottom-up, decentralized and unpredictable thing. So which doesn't mean it cannot be managed in traditional way. So the leadership requires creating the conditions that enable employees to the kind of experimenting or making some innovations on the places. So that's why the leadership should give opportunities, like in our IP increments, to experiment and to make some new products, some new thoughts, and so on. So can you please search this one?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So have you heard about what the customers say that if you're trying to ask them what do you want, what should you hear as an answer? What do you think?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
So, for example, if I create a new product and I say that this project I created a new application, and what do you need in this application? What do you say? What do you answer me?
Final result that they want to receive with,
Yes.
with your application.
Yes, but I
Give me a red button.
Give me a free, parallel, invisible red button.
So the general answer that you don't know. So to reveal the truth, to reveal the truth, you shouldn't ask them what to do. You should reveal the truth through the action or inaction, giving them opportunity to something to test, to prove, to play with. So you should not ask them the question, can the product be built? Almost everything is possible. So the question is, should this product be built, for example, because should this feature exist here? So, can you switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. And after that, the next thing, experiment. The experiment is not about just do it. That's you have heard maybe that some entrepreneurs are acting like this. Let us start, and afterwards, what happens, that happens. It's not very good way, because it is unmanageable and without validated learning. So you will do error, you will fail maybe, and you will not gain some knowledge from it. You only fail. So the main idea is to do, but have some validated learning. And this validated learning is there is a good approach to do it. It's an early adopter for your product. So, for example, you build a prototype, and afterwards you build a button, simply button in your application. And these buttons put the text, "Hello, this is application." And let your first adopters, ask your friends, colleagues, and so on to say that is it good, is it not good, well, what can you say about it, and so on. So they give 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 ideas about it, and afterwards you make the next feature, and repeatedly you enlarge, you enrich this product, and you gain the functionality you like, but only through looping over the experimental enriching your application with new features and so on. So can you switch further? So there are two almost important assumptions that entrepreneurs make. They are value hypothesis and growth hypothesis. So the value hypothesis is about, does the product or service really deliver the customers what they are using? And once they are using it, so you can develop the perfect application with a lot of functions, but definitely no one will know about it, no one will use it, and this can be perfect, but there are a lot of other applications on the market which people know, which people like to use, and well, they say there is also, you, for example, develop a booking application, and you see that, well, there is a booking.com site. Why should I use some booking Ries? I don't know. Never knows. Nobody knows, sorry. And the other thing is to grow hypothesis. So, for example, I invented the booking Ries. So I book any property within the Greece. I contact the hotels, I send them to, I gave them a link, they signed in the site, they delivered some information was transmitted automatically and so on. So, and afterwards, I ask who are my customers? My customers can be someone who travel to Greece and someone who travel abroad from Greece to Greece and so on. And how do people know about my service? How do people see my service on the internet, for example? So can you switch please to the next slide? Thank you. So for the product development, there are several questions to answer. For example, do the customers have the problem and which they are trying to solve? And if there is any solution they could buy, and would they buy it from us? So can we build a solution for this problem? So these are the 4 questions which are the product development process should answer after we start. So can you please switch over? So to steer. The steer product startup are usually real experiments. So you're learning something from those experiments. So the main goal of this experiment is to make the loop build, measure, learn loop. So you build the product, you measure it through some metrics, and you get a feedback from your potential customers or early adopters, depending on which stage we are now. And so through this minimum viable product, we test our hypothesis. So we test something in which we believe, which we say that this will be our product, our feature, our service, and so on. And as fast as we go through this cycle, we will have some information what should we do after this cycle and how. And if we build something that nobody wants, it doesn't matter if we just wasted our time and budget. So can you please switch to the next? So the next is the leap. The leap is a very interesting word. Actually, it's a high jump. The leap it is inside the collocation the leap of faith. So if you believe in something and you make some process on your assumption, it's sometimes called the leap of faith. For the startup, it is something like a strategy and to figure how to write questions, how to ask the right questions. So the startup on the early phase are the assumptions that should be checked as quickly as possible. So everything in this book is around this vision. Is about this build, measure, test loop. Can you switch to the next slide? So the test part is one of the most valuable, one of the most viable, one of the most forgot the word. This is one of the most important part of this loop, and it helps the entrepreneurs to process the learning as quick as possible. So the first processes, the first prototypes cannot be very good. They can be full of bugs. They can be a lack of features. Something cannot work. Something doesn't work as expected. But it's not the problem. The problem is if you don't have any thing like feedback. So the people don't say anything. It's actually the waste. But if they say something, even if it's not doesn't match our expectations, it's very good because we get the feedback that we are doing not right. let's turn on the next iteration. We should turn our vision. We should little bit change our vision, or we should a little bit change our plan, strategy, and so on. Can you switch to the next slide? The key takeaways of this is is that other two of them. If you don't know who is the customer is, we don't know about the quality is which will be in our product, because the customer gives us feedback on which basis we can adopt our product. And the second thing is to remove any feature or process or effort which doesn't contribute directly to the learning we are seeking now. Because if otherwise, we should be wasting our time and budget on the things that people don't want to develop, and so on. So can you switch to the next one? The types of MVP. The types of MVP, there are actually 3 types of MVP which were depicted in this book. So the first is video MVP. It's everything clear here because we explain the concept which will be in our product. For example, we create a simple, funny or very interesting movie for 3 minutes. Actually, it's not the case to create a big movie or create a detailed detailed video with the scripting, how we should act in the applications and so on. And we only explain the concept and ask people to sign up. The next approach is concierge MVP. I don't know how to pronounce this word properly. It's about when people try to develop something, some project, then this project will be steered manually. So there was an example. We made something like a cooking application. So you have a cooking application and you can choose the recipes in your cooking application, and this application automatically connects the nearest grocery store and collect your basket for your favorite meals throughout the week. So every week you get a subscription payment for $9.95, for example, for this application, and for this money you always go to the grocery store, and this grocery store delivers you a basket, exactly basket what you need. And the first one was a Wizard of Oz MVP. This is something about the simulating the technology you need to develop by doing yourself something behind. So, for example, on the early stages of a startup, you can change the work of AI or some backend of some computing stuff and so on by real people who is doing some part of the work. For example, as an example, there was an application who was talking with other people, other customers. So you can ask the question to this application, like nowadays is ChatGPT, but that day there was an application. There you can ask any question. What is the best restaurant in the hood? What is the best I don't know, haircut salon and so on, beauty salon? I don't know. And on the other side, on the first stages, there were people who were answering, and all this information was collected in the database, and since this information was analyzed, driven through the fuzzy logic stage, and afterwards, brick by brick, it was built an application who can automatically answer all these questions afterwards. So since that was a good approach. So can you switch please? Next. So the measure. The measure is a very important part of the loop. How can you see that you are making the product good? What changes in the design? What is the startup measure? How is the measurement of startup growth? And how can it be done? So one of the great things which I learned personally from this is a split test experiments. Then you get divide your project in 2 versions. One version you give to one part of the customers, the other version you give to another, and you see the results. The results can be depicted. Can you switch to the next slide? In the following metrics. So, for example, on the right side of the picture, you see the registered but not logged in customers, the logged in customers that had only one conversation with the with the other ones that had many conversations, and also the who paid for some extra features. This is one of the metrics which you divide every feature, every pattern of past customer behavior pattern, and you divide it into this diagram, and you see from month to month how the product develops, and this is one of the metrics. The other thing is how is the count of the customers who are registered, activated, logged once, were active, and so on. Yeah, the last one is more traditional, but I personally like the right one because it gives some feedback, or if we can sit and analyze why this the quantity of this customer behavior, why did this data changes. We implemented the feature 1, 2, and 3, and how does it affect these metrics, and afterwards we can have some we can make some decisions upon it. So can you switch please the next one? There are 3 A metrics which were in the book. So the first thing that the metrics should be clear cause and effect from between the experiment and the metric. So you see the customers, they are logged. So you see, hey, there are 1,000 customers who logged in our application. So it's actionable, accessible. Make the reports as simple as possible. So you can have a lot of lines, a lot of customer numbers, and a lot of text on the slide. And that's not the case. So this presentation is not so good, I think, but nonetheless. And the third thing is auditable. So you must be able to test the data by hand. So you see this. You see these numbers, and you know that this you can go to the database and you see these numbers. They shouldn't be something like hypothetical. So can you switch please to the next slide? Yeah. Pivot or preserve. Well, it's one of the key aspects of this book. So imagine you have a startup, you have an MVP, this idea has developed, and so and afterwards you got following situation. There are new customers in your project of your startup, and these customers buy something, but they are not subscribing your paid promotions. They are not subscribing for your new services, and this and the quantity of customers grows, not so slightly grows, but not so rapidly as you desire. What to do? And maybe if you see the metrics, it's time to pivot. I don't know how to pronounce it. To pivot. So you see the metrics. You make 1, 2, 3 metrics because because you should choose the one metric. You should choose many metrics and do your decision upon them. And you see that you should pivot. So you should, for example, you should change the customers market. So before you developed in the simple customer market for the local residents, you developed your application. Afterwards, you can say that, well, it's time to go for business, and you should change the auditory of your application, or you should change some technology inside the application, or. There are a lot of things. I'll talk about them in the next slides. Can you switch please to the next one? So types of pivots. So there are zoom in and zoom out pivots. Both of them are zoom in and zoom out. They are vice versa. And in one thing, the single feature becomes the whole product. So in other vice versa, what is considered the whole product becomes the feature of something much larger. So it's all about if you develop something too small or too big. So the customer segment, for example, you have built a customer you have built a product that solves a real problem for a real customer, but they are not the customers you will be planning to serve. For example, you built the application for the grocery stores, but afterwards you decided to switch it to the construction one. So the next, the customer needs. So the problem is you didn't focus on the real customer needs. So you have the focus group, the early adopters who talked about their needs, but the real customers' needs they are different, and you can switch between the customer segment and so on. So the second, the other is the platform. So the application can be switched to the platform. For example, you have several little applications like my pet project, and you should switch to them to something more, like you make the platform. For example, there are a lot of platforms for Google. For example, in Google, we are using now Google Slides, and for Google there is Google Documents, Google Sheets, and so on. So that's like a platform. And can you switch please to the next one? So you can switch the business architecture, so you can switch to B2B to B2C and vice versa. The value capture, so maybe you can switch from the paid promotion to the advertisement model or to something else. You can change the engine of growth, so how to seek for the new customers, the channel of distribution, or the technology. So can you switch to the next one? The accelerate point. So in the accelerate point, you should answer several questions. The main of them is how we grow our business, who is our customer, and which the customer should listen and which should we ignore. Because it's really the hardcore, the complex thing, because some customers can act themselves in the destructive way. Can you please switch to the next? The badges. So maybe all of us are working in an agile world. So the badge, so we are making something like sprints, iterations, and PIs. And this is actually the small batches. The small batches are when we make something in one PI, in one sprint, we get some learning from it. We get some learning that we done good, we done bad, that doesn't meet our customers' needs. It may, in the role of customers are usually our POs, and so, and we make the continuous deployment. Actually, with the use of CI/CD in our technology, in our specification in IT, and we are releasing small new features all the time. So as well, it can be made also in the construction and also in manufacturing, as well as in IT. So can we switch to the next slide? So this is the growth. The growth is the mechanism for startup to achieve the sustainable growth. Sustainable growth is then the customers come to the actions from the past customers. There is a special metrics which act our existing customer, which to the customers which they bring to them. And if it is more than one, is good. If it is less than one, we should think out what is going wrong and apply different metrics to see, because one matrix cannot show us anything. The bunch of metrics can make some progress. So can you switch to the next slide? There are three engines of growth. The three engines of growth are depicted in this book, and the thing is, I have slightly picked up the first engine of growth on the previous slide, and this engine of growth is sticky engine. So the sticky engine is the rate that the new customer acquisition should exceed the churn rate. It means that the growth rate is the nature of growth rate minus churn rate. The churn rate is something like the people who stop using the service and go to your successor. Or not successor, but go to your opponent. I don't know the word. To the opponent. So your growth rate is the natural growth rate. So how many people know about your process, about your application, and be ready to be the new customers, and minus people who declined using your product. So the second engine of growth is the viral ring engine. So it's like a Facebook. So you have a hype about something. So all your people, all your relatives, all your friends, all your neighbors are talking about it, and you are engaged, and you say, "Oh, I want also to try it." And the paid engine. This is dull from one point of view, but very good if you place some Google AdWords or Instagram advertising of your product. For example, like maybe you have seen a lot this in Instagram or in Facebook, these simple games. Then they're about freeing the role games. They are actually between every third reel or every third post. So you see. And can we switch to the next slide? So there are 4 ways to pass companies to sustainable growth. So the word of the mouth. This is about how people act about your application. So they can say to their relatives, they can say to their friends, and there was an experiment. There was a startup. As I recall, the teenager girl was asked to install the application on her phone and to ask her friends to log in. And she refused to do it. Why? Why do you think? So she answered, what will my friends and my relatives think about me if I ask if it will be not so good as we expect? So what they will think that I'm giving them crap. So that's why we create a good area of Wordle about our application, about our product, and since that we get the sustainable growth. The other side is a side effect of the product usage. For example, if you use Google Maps, you can drive to your destination safely. You can find a place they want to be much rapidly, and as if you were using another car, another non-electronic navigation system, and so on. The third is through the funded advertising. So, as I have mentioned, you can pay for the Google AdWords, you can pay for Instagram advertising, you can pay the advertising in newspaper, and so on. And through the repeat purchase of use. So, if you build really good application, you can ask for a subscription on it, actually. And they say that, and you say, you should pay, for example, around $10 per month for this application. People will pay if they need it, and if they don't need, they will not pay. So can you switch please to the next slide? So the second thing is adapt. So maybe you have made some increments, some experiments around your application, and you should adapt it. So how should you adapt it? So the training is important to focus on the incremental. So you should train you should focus on something which is really important for the next increment, because there are a lot of key takeaways from one sprint to another sprint and so on, but nevertheless there are something more important than other stuff, and this is the task of product owner to make a decision which are the main key takeaways. So the other method is the 5 whys, to ask yourself in case of a failure. For example, we had a failure on our server. We say why? Because there was a lack of storage. Why? Because something happened on the mail. Why? Because the pipeline was broken. Why? Because there was made an error in line 55 on the 4th sheet. Okay, found. And in next sprint we'll fix this pipeline and everything will be okay. So the other thing is, whenever something goes wrong, ask yourself what could I prevent myself from being in this situation ever again, so I can fix this line. Can you switch to the next one? The 5 whys. 5 whys, I have depicted it on the last slide, but there are something that I should also tell about it. It shouldn't be applied to every thing that comes, because sometimes the problems are very evident. So you see that the problem is to go and to make, and it's not the case. Then you should give why. So the second thing is, everybody who is connected to the problem need to be at the meeting to solve it. For example, once we had a general Ausfall. So once we had a big problem on our system, then we should focus. We don't know the decision. We don't know how to deal with it. But we collected a big WebEx meeting, about 20 or 30 persons. The 3 of them were actually making something. They were me and some, but 27 were sitting and also controlling, and but all of them trying to deliver the value. So they tried to contact meanwhile some other person to solve this problem. They can contact different departments from all over Germany to help us to solve the problem as fast as possible. So this is what I'm talking about. And explain what is and why the team, what is it and why the team will benefit from it. Sometimes we are doing what we don't know why we are doing it, and that's about it. So can you switch please? Innovate. So there is an innovative sprint, IP iteration, as far as I know, in our organization, and this is about it. And the teams can do a cross functionality to achieve validated learning, and the startup is not a blueprint of the steps to follow. So we can try something new, something different in this iteration sprint to experiment around, and maybe in this experiment we will figure out what to do better, how to do it, and what we can achieve with it. And the last one, but not least, which we should do in this thing, is to secure but secure resources. So imagine that we have a bucket of money, and we have not a lot of money. And in both cases, we shouldn't behave us like an idiots, because we should use these resources, this money, in very, how to say, I've forgotten the word, sorry. We should use this money thinking about it, how we should deliver, what part of the money will be for the marketing, what will be for the development, what will be for testing, what will be for announcement, for HR resources, and so on. So, but if we have a lot of money, there are a lot of startups on the Silicon Valley which had great investors and a lot of money in them, and you see that if you ask if they have taken all this money and they started to spend it for everything, like a pool in the house, like I don't know, a lot of unusual, unneeded stuff in the office, for example, and so on and so on. And afterwards, the investor asked, "And what you have done for it?" And they showed one buggy program, and that's all. That's all. All was over. So investor said, "Okay, that's enough," and the company died. So can you switch to the last one? The epilogue. So the waste doesn't come from inefficient organization. If the work is rather from working on the wrong things. So maybe you have seen that sometimes you are working on something that doesn't benefit you, doesn't benefit others. So what are you doing? You're doing like this. So there is surely nothing quite so useless as doing the great efficiency what shouldn't be done at all. So some customers don't ask for anything, but you do. Why? Because there was a plan to do it. That's not right. And the third is we must avoid caricature that science means the formula of lack of humanity in work. So we are all people and we should communicate with each other, we should remain people in every situation, we should respect each other, and that is the basis of the collective work, as far as I know. So thank you for attention, and maybe you have some questions regarding it. Yes?
Who's the author? Who wrote this?
Ries. The book was published in 2011.
What can you tell about the author? Who is
He's at first he was a programmer in one of the firms in Silicon Valley. Afterwards he became an entrepreneur. He started many startups by himself, and afterwards he was teaching playing trainer, so to say. He started to teach this agile methodology and all this lean startup, lean development of the project. And he was also the advisor of many firms in Silicon Valley.
So he summarized his experience with Lean in this book, and he applied it to his startups.
Yes, he was an advisor, and he was asked to make our startup, our companies on this situation. We have a problem with this, and this, and he advised what to do.
Okay, so did he was inspired by Toyota or something like that?
Yes, he was definitely inspired by Toyota, by Kanban. There was a bunch of examples about Toyota. So maybe you haven't heard. There is something like the schnur. How to say it? Something like the bell. If something goes wrong in the manufacturing, they clean the bell and everything stops. It wasn't the problem. So because if they have made a lot of bad products, they will fail to get the next customer bunch. But if they stop the construction or manufacturing, they can fix this bug, they can fix this issue, and then continue without problems.
So from your point of view, what is